So this is what we're going to be achieving with this video. We got some nice shadows across the face. We have this triangle under the eye, which they call Rembrandt's triangle. This is done through a texture opposed to actual normal editing. You'll notice though there is kind of some disparity between the shadows on the top of the head and on the actual face. That is because of the way this works. There are some issues with this method and you'll have to create your own shaders to make this work as well. Before I go on, I just want to give a shout out to Anime XD channel where I got a lot of this information from. So I suggest going over to their channel and checking out their videos. You might learn a thing or two. I'm going to add a little bit extra to what they did in their video because I'm going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into how some of these textures work and like the do's and don'ts, because you can end up with some weird artifacting if you do not do it correctly. So what this method consists of is using two different materials. So as you can see at the moment, we have a face shadow and a head shadow. So the face shadows are going to be assigned to this front part of the face, right, this area here. I haven't included the eyebrows of this area, but you might want to do that. It depends how you want to set it up. You'll see like with my actual light here, so if I rotate this round, the kind of eyebrows are a bit out of sync. I haven't completely set this up correctly. I've just kind of got it into a working point. So like all the shadows of the eye and stuff are incorrect at the moment. But when we go into the actual creation of the texture, I'll talk a bit more about this. So for this method, you cannot use the Genshin shader because there is an inconsistency with the shadows. I think the way the Genshin shader works is it's more like an overlay and it causes the shadow to kind of tint the original texture, whereas this is actually like a complete replacement of the texture. So to open this shader editor, you need to go over to here, shader editor. So if you were in the 3D port, you press shader editor here, and then you'll bring this up. Then you need to create a material over this side, so you just press the plus and press new material, and make sure nodes is selected. So then when you select your material, it will come up like this. And then all you're going to do here is you right click, you press add, and you then search, so diffuse BDS. So this will be the first thing you'll need. You'll make no changes to this. Then you need a shader to RGB, and then this color ramp. So with the color ramp, so if I click and then add color ramp, it will come out like this. So what you'll need to do is set this to constant, and then you can drag this white one out here, and I just put it at 50% because it doesn't really change a lot. So then from here we're going to go into this mix, color mix. So you'll add a mix color here, and then this will go into your output. And then this side we're going to have the UV map with this mapping node, and then what you do for these two is you'll search for image texture and you'll get one of these come up, and you're going to have two of these, and these will both come from this vector. So you'll have the base color, so this will be your base color for the texture. So if I just open the textures here and you can see them. So this is my old base texture. You'll see in a minute that a lot of this is obsolete, but this is my old texture. And then I've also got a dark shadow color, which is like a darkened version. It's not just like a dark color, it's kind of a slightly different tone. So then these two, then your shadow will go into the A and your base will go into B, like so. So the face shadow is a bit more complex. For this, we're actually going to be creating a special texture that is essentially like a shadow map for the face. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So this is what the shadow map will look like. So you've kind of got white to black, and this depends on like where the position of the light is. Now, essentially what we're going to be doing is cheating. We're going to be overlaying this texture to create like a shadow on the face, kind of like a pretend shadow, like simulating shadow, but it isn't like a real shadow. So the first thing you'll need is a value node. So again, that's just, you just do the search value and you'll find it. Pretty simple. Now this is just a group, but you can actually make this outside of here. So all this is you've got, this will be the value, and then from here you've got two sections. You've got a flip texture section, and then you've got a shadow control section. We divide it with a value of 2, then we get a fraction, and then we split this. And this is going to essentially flip the texture based on like the position of the value that's coming in. We subtract it so it flips it essentially. And then we come out, and then this goes into our output. And I'll show what the output will be in a minute. And then we've also got the shadow control, which is again these. We've got an absolute value here. So again, you can pause the video and copy this over fairly easily. It's just a case of copying the numbers. The one thing to note, this is 0.510 and not 0.5. There's a certain point where the face shadow needs to be completely covered or completely off. 0.10 makes that work. So then the two values from here, so if I jump back in, you've got this vector that comes out and this value that comes out. So then these will go, one will go over to this section here, which is similar to the thing that we had set up earlier. The main difference is we've got this shadow color, which is again just an image texture. So you just go image texture, like so. You would just set this to the actual face texture thing. And then you go through this color ramp. This one's just set to linear. It doesn't need to be constant, this one. And then you've got this greater than clamp here, which comes out of the value. And then this goes into the mix factor here. And then over here, we've got that similar setup with the UV mapping for the two different textures. So these are your texture inputs then. And then this comes out then to your material output. So the one extra component to talk about here is where the value is, we've actually got a driver set up. So this is how this is going to work. It doesn't actually calculate anything from the light vector itself. What it's doing is it's taking the rotation of the light, and then it's kind of using this as information to go through all these nodes and then locate the position of the shadow based on this shadow texture that we've created here. Now, as for the head shadows, so if I select this like this, these are the areas that I've got selected here. So if I open the UV editor now, so this is the old texture that I was using that I've been using for all the others. So you can see that the face texture is no longer here. So if I were to select the face texture, you'll see that this is separate. So what I've actually had to do is separate these out into two different textures. So if I just select the face, you'll see that this is all the face texture is. And we've kind of stretched this out like so. If you haven't applied a mirror modifier yet, you can actually align just half the face like this. And then in your actual mirror modifier, you actually have a option in your mirror modifier. I believe it's in data. And you can actually mirror the U and V depending, I think it's U, but I'm not sure. I can't remember which way around it is. But if you put your texture like directly in the center like so and have it just covering half of the UV map, when you press mirror, what it will do is it will actually mirror this part over. So by using abnormal here, this is a plugin that I've shown in previous videos. I've actually smoothed the normals out completely for all of the face by using just the spherize. So you go in here, spherize, and then that's it. It's basically, it makes the shading really smooth across the entire face. It's not required, but it does kind of help with just getting smooth shadows across the face. There are some issues with this setup. Because we're faking the light, there is going to be like a desync between the shadows. So this shadow here is actual shadows. So if I were to turn the rotation on the x-axis, you'll see that it's rotating, but it's not actually rotating on the face. This is because the face shadows are only going to work on the z-axis. So this is kind of the limitation of this method, but you can get very accurate and sharp shadows across the face with no glitches as a result of this. Now, if you're going to be using this in a game engine, I'm not sure what shaders actually support texture-driven face shadows besides the cartoon shader for Unreal. So you'll have to look into your shader to see if it actually supports texture-driven face shadows. So this part of the mesh is fake, whereas this is actually properly taking the light vector. This is all fake. That's why it's slightly out of sync. But if you imagine your character's going to have hair and stuff, so the top of the head's going to be covered for the most part. There's also, you'll notice, this kind of triangle shape here. I will talk about what's causing that. I did have other issues with this kind of triangle and a lot of glitches around the face. And this is just because of how you set up your textures. So I think the next thing to do is to get into Photoshop, and we'll talk about the textures a little bit. You can do this in GIMP, which is a free program. I'll show you how to export in GIMP because there's a specific way you have to do it. But if you're going to do this in Photoshop, what you need is the mode here needs to be set to RGB color, and we need to have 8 bits channel here. And then when you export, you'll be exporting with a quick export as a PNG. Now you need to create 8 images here. So what I've got is my UV layout here. So the first one, you call this A. This is just a white edge like so. So this kind of goes along the face. Depending on how you unwrap your face, you might actually split this central bit here. So there's like kind of a split here, so you'll have to kind of adjust it accordingly to that. When you go to B, it's going to be the same texture, but you add extra to it. There's kind of a bit of a glitch that happens if you don't keep this line straight. You're gonna have to either have this line curved or straight, depending on how you want the shadow to kind of encroach across the face. Here you also notice I've got a bit of light on the nose here. This causes the shadow on the side of the nose. For C, this is further across. So if you remember, I showed that there's a bit of a glitch where there's kind of a triangle on the top of the head. Here we've got this triangle. This is because what's happening is, as we go from B to C, you'll see that there's a curve here. The way to fix this is to basically eliminate this curve. So you'll just kind of make this straight. Now, the position of this is going to affect a lot. So this is one of my early textures that I created, and you can see that this black line here cuts in and causes this area to kind of be 2 different shades. You want to avoid this. This is my other one. This is the one that worked out better. You'll see that this dark line is actually here. So the only way you're going to work this out is by messing around with the positions of the textures. So what I believe for me is the issue I was having was between B. I think it was this position of B. I had it too far over. I think I had it right up here, but it actually needs to be only slightly in. And C, to be honest, this could actually be further back. But originally I had this going across the eye. So then the next one is D, and D is just straight across the face here, and we have this kind of triangle area under the eye. And then E is where it starts to encroach over. So you've kind of got this coming over on the forehead in like a curve here, and then I've done like a curve around the chin and the lips. You don't have to do these little curves, but it does kind of add a little bit to like the stylization of the shadows. Where this triangle is, you've kind of got this encroaching now into the face. Now what I've done for the other side of the face, so that all I've got here is a black background and I'm painting white sections over the top. But for the other side, I've created a new group, and I've kind of created this border around which is all white, and then I've taken these A, B, I think it's A, B and C, and then I've inverted them in terms of the color. So this would essentially be C but inverted, so flipped over to the other side and the color set to black instead of white. And then the same, this is B, and then the same, this is A, but it's just all inverted. So the result is 8 images. I'll go through them slowly so you can see them again. This is A. This is B. This is C. This is D. This is E. This is F. This is G. This is H. So obviously this is going to depend on how your face mesh is and how you set up your UVs. But the general principle is you want to end up with a shadow like I showed here. You want it so this line isn't encroaching here, otherwise you're going to have some weird outcomes. You're going to have to mess around with this quite a bit. It took me a little while to get it to actually work in the way that I wanted, so just bear that in mind. So then once all these are done, you're going to export them all as PNG. So again, as I said earlier, you need to make sure that the mode is set to RGB color 8-bit channel, and then you're going to export quick as a PNG and then export them all into a folder. In the description there'll be a link to a SDF tool, which is a zip file like so. In here you'll have an SDF PNG, so this is just a pre-made thing. So if you just want to use this, you can use this and then kind of shape your UV around it. You'll also have example images that show how these are kind of constructed and how they would look. And then in the images folder, you'll have like an A to H, which are the same files in the example file. Now this is where you're going to put your files. So you want to extract this zip file into a new folder, and then you want to then in your Photoshop, you want to go to export, quick export, and then you want to do each layer A, B, C, D, E, all the way up to H, and fill this folder like so. What you'll then do is run the BAT. So if I just run this now, it will do this, it will be converting, it'll go through each, and then it will blend the files together. And if all is well, it will say finish, and then it will press any key to continue. Now, if it doesn't work, that is because you haven't set the mode to 8-bit. The one way to check that these files are correct is if you go in here and look at the file and press properties. In the details, there should be a bit depth and it should be at 24. If it's not at 24, then you've probably done something wrong. Now, if you're going to do this in GIMP, the way you would do it is when you do export, you do export as, then you call it whatever with a .png, and then you press export. When you export in GIMP, a little window like this will come up where it says automatic pixel format. You need to select 8BPC, and then you need to have RGB. If this doesn't work, it might be that you need to put RGB A, which is just an additional of the alpha channel, but I believe that it should work with just RGB. So once this is finished and you press continue, you'll get this SDF file, which will be the blend of all your textures. So then when you go into your shader, all you need to do then is set that file into here, and then you should be good to go. All you need to do now is set up this driver for this to work. So the way you'll do that is if you open a new window at the side here by dragging across and pressing drivers, and then if you click this, what you'll do is you'll right click here, and then you'll have an option. Mine just says delete, but you'll have like an add driver option here. And then what you need to do is you need to set up this driver. So at the side here you've got drivers. So you want to have all these settings here, minimum value, just var. Then this here is the light. So your light source in your scene, mine's just called point. So you can just kind of select this in this drop down here. You find it and then select it. Then you need to have the Z rotation, auto Euler, and in world space. Then you need to add a generator. So you'll press generator here. So you got modifiers at the side. If you can't see this, it means you need to open all these up and select this here, and then you'll be able to see it. So with this selected, you then go to generator. You have this option here, and this number here is kind of seems to be the optimal number that kind of makes it. If you move this up and down, it will change the rate of which the shadow rotates around the character. So you might want to tweak it to try and get it correct, but I think this number here is the best you're going to get. Now with all that done, when you rotate this on the Z axis, you should get the shadow showing as so. So that's about it for setting up texture driven face shadows. It's kind of a bit easier than normal editing, and the other thing is with shape keys, it does, like I've set up this really stupid smile, it doesn't recalculate like you do with actual normals. So the shadows do remain smooth even though they do displace a little bit. So for doing like facial animations through blend keys or through a rig, this is probably the better option. As for support for engines, so we're talking about like Unity and Unreal, I do know that the cartoon shader for Unreal does support face shadows. I haven't tried it myself, so I don't know how well this method that I've done here works with the actual shader in Engine, but I assume it's the same principle, so it should work. As for RealToon, I'm not sure if RealToon actually supports this or not, so you'd have to probably look into that yourself. The alternative would be to create a shader within those engines yourself, but that's obviously far beyond the scope of this video, so that's up to you to work out. Thanks for watching. This concludes the shaders for now. If I find any new methods, I might come back and do some more, but I think I'm going to move on to something else on the next video. So if you enjoyed it, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe for more videos. Thanks to my patrons for, you know, supporting me. And, well, maybe you're curious how I edit normals, like a good way to edit normals using abnormal and actually just doing it straight in Blender itself as well. So there'll be a video link on the screen now, so click that. And if you want to do none of that, would you kindly bugger off?
Maybe.